jumping from consultancy to entrepreneurial to corporate environment, and I identify that corporate environment, at least to my skill and capabilities, led to explore and project and deploy at a wider scale. We started to play and to maximize the advantage of all of our footage, pictures, videos that we were gathering across all of our construction sites. We are performing with our own developed solution, the Fly AI, the monitoring and analysis of our energy transmission lines. We are always trying to apply experimentation, try to pilot that at very low scale to gain the real variables that could validate that the impact that we have estimated is aligned with the reality. And from 60% of the startup fail, and what we are seeing right now in the AI ecosystem, that many of the services provided as a solution by those startups could not be available in 2-3 years from now.
Welcome to the Chief AI Officer Podcast,
where AI meets leadership.
And here is your host, Sanjay Puri.
Welcome to the CAIO Podcast, where we explore the frontiers of artificial intelligence with the visionaries shaping its future. I'm your host, Sanjay Puri, and today we have the privilege of speaking with Dimitris Bountolos, the Chief Information and Innovation Officer of Ferrovial. Dimitris brings over 2 decades of experience driving innovation and digital transformation across various industries. As a leader at Ferrovial, a global infrastructure operator committed to sustainable solutions, Dimitris is at the forefront of applying AI and cutting-edge technologies to reshape the future of energy, mobility, construction, and more. With his background in entrepreneurship, strategy, consulting, and corporate leadership, Demetrius offers a unique perspective on the challenges and opportunities of AI in large-scale operations. Welcome to the show, Demetrius.
Hi, everyone. My pleasure to be here with you.
Wonderful. Demetrius, we have a global audience. So for them who might not be as familiar with Ferrovial, can you talk a little bit about what Ferrovial is and your role in the company?
Yeah, definitely. So Ferrovial is infrastructure player operating mostly in all continents and deploying different activities in the entire value chain. We are trying to optimize from the design, from the finance point of view of those mega projects, construction and operations. So we are covering all those disciplines. And when we talk operations, in particular is assets in categories like energy, airports, highways. So we are trying to optimize that value chain, trying to reduce the risk and using technology, as we comment probably later on, to identify the risk and to compound with different technologies that risk and assess the risk. And I'm acting as the Chief Innovation and Information Officer. It's a global role covering all geographies and divisions. No, my team is spread in different geographies, based in Amsterdam. That dual approach to cover all the technology angle plus how to put in value the innovation. It's something quite challenging and exciting at the same time.
Oh, that's fantastic. Demetrius, we have a lot of listeners who are interested in pursuing this new role of Chief AI Officers. So can you talk some of those listeners towards how did your journey from civil engineering led you to becoming a leader in AI and innovation?
Yeah, it's not obvious, as you can imagine, with that digital background. But I think it has a narrative where I've been able to accommodate the business needs and the adoption and the implementation of technology as a catalyzer for the generation of of value in a quite seamless way. I started my career quite connected with infrastructure as civil engineers, designing, optimizing from a technical point of view those variables, and I moved through a transition where the transport at different level was the common denominator. No? I was very attached to the operation, how to optimize the operation. At some stage was the airline business or within the airport ecosystem. And I always have the necessity to answer big questions or to tackle big problems, orchestrating resources, aligning necessities, and using technology or digitalizing the the boundary conditions of that problem. I was gaining responsibility in a natural way, jumping from consultancy to entrepreneurial to corporate environment, and I identified that corporate environment, at least to my skill and capabilities, led to explore and project and deploy at a wider scale the ambition and the goals of the study I was running. From the airline business, I jumped to the infrastructure. We are running airport. We are at the same time using in our daily activities more than 1 decade ago, more than 5 years ago, technology as a quite relevant instrument for achieving our targets. So I think it has been a natural journey. I have a very deep sensibility from the customer perspective, from my background, and also from the business side. So I'm acting in the middle of the epicenter of that always complicated boundary, how to decode the necessities of the business and put in value the existing and the evolutionary technology in order to achieve something that is difficult to imagine at a wider scale from the perspective of the company, but more than ever nowadays, everybody is talking digital language, is facing opportunities in putting in value all of our variables. So I think it has been a natural evolution and a playground where I believe I could be useful with my teams in order to decode the goals and the objective of the business.
Well, that's very helpful. Dimitris, would you say, just as a follow on, that your multivariate background, you've been entrepreneur, you worked in multiple different phases, is actually helpful because you're dealing with many, many different aspects, as you said, of this. So, for our listeners, have there is no, a clear path, but having multiple stakeholders as you had, is that helpful to you in your current role?
I think definitely, no. In my current role, I interact with all the C-level, from HR to financial to all the business units to understand from a quite wide set of prior experiences, the bottlenecks, the constraint, the necessities, even the technicality of many of those responsibilities, I believe is making me much more solid and robust in order to understand each landscape and create the overall puzzle at the same time. No? In many occasions, I feel directly the empathy of a business problem because I can easily recall similar moments live 10, 15, 20 years ago in a context like the one my colleagues are living. No? And I think CIOs, anyone that is using transversal capabilities to be deployed at the corporate level or close to the business have to develop a 360 understanding of the corporate context. In my case, I've been forced to develop progressively that, but my prior experience and heritage and legacy has facilitated that and is helping me on a daily basis.
No, so that's a very important point for our listeners. Having a multivariate background does help in this new role because you're dealing with so many different stakeholders. Um, Demetrius, generally, you don't assume an infrastructure company like Ferrovial is an AI-driven company. So, can you tell our listeners how is Ferrovial leveraging AI across its many diverse business lines from toll roads to airports?
in many different ways, no, and not leading or following the hype of ChatGPT or generative AI. We have been so far more than 10, 12 years consistently applying different technologies, starting with machine learning, traditional MPL, uh, um, OCRs, advanced and progressive capabilities to assess the risk or identify future trends or in many different um, environments. No? We started with the projection and with the forecast of many of the critical variables that will be interesting um, to be assessed, from water consume prediction to the forecast of customers in future airport, the evolution of the prices, and when we are tendering globally in multi-billion projects, the necessity to identify the volatility of a set of variables require different techniques. We started to play and to maximize the advantage of all of our footage, pictures, videos that we were gathering across all of our construction sites, more than 1,000, in order to identify patterns, in order to progressively try to assess the situation of a power transmission line. And at that moment, we were um, considering always the trade-off. Should we develop our own software? Should we rely on available frameworks? And we were progressively developing our own solutions because traditionally our environment was not um, um, very active at adopting a standard solution, and we force ourselves to develop our own standards. And from that stage, we have been gaining multiple use cases during the last 3 years, starting with GP1, GPT-1. We embrace and progressively adopt all the new capabilities, in particular with generative AI. No, we during a couple of years explore intensively with very very powerful results the generative design and the parametric design, how to generate thousands of iteration in front of a potential design um, uh, environment, and we obtain quite positive and very useful conclusion that we introduce directly in the design of transmission line, in the allocation of the solar panels, in the distribution of how are we operating our highways, in specific algorithms for the traffic prediction, for the yield management, in endless list of domains. No, facing right now the new paradigm that we are trying to maximize with the generative AI. What we are trying to adopt is a much more transversal adoption of use cases and proactive orchestration of use cases that will lead us towards a autonomous and more or less interaction. We are quite confident that the potential impact in our different domains could be critical, just to maintain the competitiveness, to keep growing several verticals, and the amount of data that we have gathered during decades. And right now, it's critical in order to generate value. No? But in front of the audience and many of your spectators, it could be perceived like construction company. It's nothing connected with the new opportunities of AI. It's just the opposite. Every time you have physical environment, you have massive volumes of data, and you have the possibility to record using different type of footages. That environment is like a playground in order to identify the business needs, try to put in value the new technologies to accelerate to the synthesis, to generate more options, or to predict in a more accurate way what you are seeing, what you are reading, or where the numbers are projecting for future needs. No?
No, that's very, very interesting because one of the purposes of this podcast is to showcase companies like Ferrovial who are really where people would not perceive them to be, AI-driven companies, but are using AI in so many different ways. And you kind of highlighted that, whether it's from predictive analytics to using it for construction, for architectural stuff, for footage of things, etc. And that is where really the power, and you're using Gen AI, generative AI, across the board, and probably will. So, Dimitris, can you share for our listeners an example of a successful AI implementation that might have had a positive impact on the operations for
Okay.
Ferrovial?
That's something quite easy to be understood. For example, using traditional models and visual computing nowadays. No, we are performing with our own developed solution, Fly AI, the monitoring and analysis of our energy transmission lines. Those transmission lines are placed in remote environments, very difficult to be maintained traditionally. We are using drones, and those drones have the capability to record, analyze in real time the asset. We have developed our own algorithms in order to detect different type of defects, different type of potential failures. And those algorithms, for example, using visual computing, has been trained with synthetic data that we have developed at the beginning using frameworks like Unreal or Unity. So because it was so complicated to have all the different scenarios that we wanted to monitorize, we were forced to develop hundreds of different damage types, and that has been very successful. And right now we are running that with a tremendous impact in the optimization and efficiency of that task. Another example similar to that, no? Every time we approach a new greenfield project where we need to deploy a solar farm, the perfect allocation of each of the solar panel, the level of the flatness and the earth movement that we need to apply has a tremendous impact in the potential performance of the overall farm. To simulate, in this case, with generative design, all the different scenarios in order to identify which is the optimum um, case. That's something that has given a lot of improvement in the way we were managing that activity. No, in traffic, we are forecasting and analyzing all different boundary conditions in order to identify which is the optimum evolution of the traffic or even pricing. And we are initiating in this domain the adoption of AI in order to improve the simulation. No? It's interesting that the traditional corporate division are progressively embracing AI like many other domains, but those that are demanding more and those that are generating richer use cases are the ones connected with the asset, with the physical environment, and the outcome is really outstanding in many examples.
That's very, very helpful. You talked about use of drone for evaluating construction sites. You talked about the evaluation of traffic. You talked about how do you evaluate and plan and strategize solar farms and solar panels. So it's very, very helpful that across multiple areas you're seeing the use of AI in so many different ways, whether it's in predictive analytics, it's in are the drones also taking video footage also, right? And you're doing evaluation of a multimodal analysis.
Right now, we started as many in that domain using only screenshots. Right now, we are able to tag and to identify emotion defects that are specifically interesting when you have a video footage. We are applying the same techniques, for example, in analysis of the traffic in our highways. We are deploying advanced visual computing models trained by us in order to detect the characteristic or the vehicles, obviously to analyze all the plates with amazing, remarkable ratios that also are using synthetic data in order to be trained, in order to reinforce the outcomes of those visual computing models. The multidimensional environment has given us a tremendous inventory of capabilities. No, we are monitoring, for example, the evolution of the construction sites, and we have live video, and with that live video, we can detect hazards. We can identify the situation that could be connected with potentially health and safety situation, and we believe, despite our commitment and the transversal perspective of the potential, that we are still in the baby stage, no? Because every week, every month, we are seeing that the capabilities are wider, the context that we can transfer in order to make that in many occasions during edge is increasing. The list of use cases and the inventory of opportunities that our teams and the portfolio teams are gathering is becoming really relevant. No? Main problem right now, as happening in many companies, how to prioritize based in value. We are not just using this on a pilot perspective. We want to scale the adoption. We want to deploy real use cases that will transform the way we manage processes, and that's the stage we are. And how to educate the overall employees in order to adopt these technologies, identify that the degrees of freedom has been radically changed, and how to use the Copilot and many other tools in order to, on the very first day in the company, identify that there are potential new ways to approach problems and develop new solutions.
No, that's very helpful, and I have several follow-on questions to that, Dimitris. But first, I would love for your company to come into where I live in Washington, D.C. Our traffic can be really horrible. And for you to come and fix that problem, because sometimes it can take an hour, hour and a half just to get to some places. Uh,
We are quite proud. I don't know, we inaugurated 1 year and a half ago the I-66 outside the Beltway. At that moment, it was the biggest private public investment in a so-called P3, no? And the way to model the existing congestion, maintain the service level, is only one corridor. But that vision of how you can, through the development of technology, and we are using a lot of techniques in that particular highway on a daily basis. No,
Yeah, and that seems to have improved because I have a feeling, and not to get side, that you use some kind of surge mechanism in terms of HOV, the in terms of paying more so that you can direct traffic, etc. And I have a feeling you must be using some kind of AI also to assist with
yeah,
that.
our algorithms in particular in that domain are trying to, with the first commitment is to maintain the service level and to have a higher speed, and in the managed lane be able to accommodate the tariffs. We have that dynamic pricing, and to optimize that in order to maintaining the value, um, uh, operate the overall ecosystem is the goal that we are trying to continually optimize using, in this case, algorithms that are extracting all kind of variables, converting the highway like in a digital highway, generating APIs that in real time are transferring information and trying to compute on the edge that information, just to understand in a granular way, based in the digital twin that we develop, that is describing that highway, which is the situation of congestion, which is the speed in each of the segment, and we can with those boundary conditions optimize in real time and in an autonomous way, and recirculating that in the algorithm to continuous learning. No, this is the backbone of what we are doing, in particular in highways. We're quite proud, no, to challenge the status quo and keep investing and exploring how to optimize a limited asset, when at the end you have the final customer suffering a potential congestion, and to increase the capacities is an obsession, but in a sustainable way. And in a consistent way at the same time.
Yeah. So as a follow-on, you mentioned a couple of things, Dimitris. One is you talk how is Ferrovial using AI from a sustainability standpoint for some of its activities? Can you talk to our listeners a little bit about that?
Yeah, so for us, as I mentioned before, no, the sustainability angle is covering again the overall value chain to reduce our footprint and to reduce the impact, to reduce the embedded CO2 in all the materials that we are using, to have a granular mechanism to capture all what we are doing and to have an homogeneous method of tracking things in several of the processes to the AI to forecast better what we are going to consume and identify in those consumable, including water, how we can reduce to identify with visual computing the environment where potential future infrastructure are going to be deployed, and analyze the potential impact and the mitigation measures in advance, even before putting over the terrain one machine. And so these are inventory of all kind of initiatives that are reducing the impact, are reducing the CO2, are improving the forecast, are maintaining a granular and more coherent inventory of all what we are doing. We are seeing that this is the tendency, and this is going to gain more relevance in the future, no? To assess what is not in many occasions so evident, but is spread in all of our activities required to gather data at very wide scale. No, there are examples for instance, where to develop future materials. Everybody is talking about green steel, green concrete, to simulate all the potential variation and how to minimize the embedded carbon in those materials could reduce dramatically the overall uh, impact during the generation of those materials. And right now, many companies, we are exploring that with a lot of startup, are exploring how to design uh, like in other fields are designing new proteins or new biotech type of approaches, construction materials that are much more sustainable by definition. No? And this is a new category, super exciting, that was impossible to compute years ago without the embracing of generative AI.
No, that is very helpful from a sustainability standpoint. Dimitris, you talked about so many different use cases that you deal with. How do you prioritize which use case to go for? Because there's literally could be hundreds of them, and obviously you need to pick and choose. So, for our listeners, your peers who are also struggling with this issue, can you tell them how do you prioritize?
So we are very, very, I will say, strict, and we have a very solid discipline in the portfolio management activities, covering all kind of technologies, all kind of projects. This is not just about AI, So our value-driven prioritization approach is applicable transversally. Is trying to identify since the ideation phase at least five obvious levers. We're talking about efficiency. We're talking about the potential competitiveness that we are gaining, revenue generation, diversification, even the reduction of tangible cost at the very, very short term. No? Um, Typically, when the applicability of what we are trying to do is very novel, it's quite revolutionary, we are always trying to apply experimentation, try to pilot that at very low scale to gain the real variables that could validate that the impact that we have estimated is aligned with the reality, and from that extrapolate. No? So every time we are defining how to prioritize, we have a set of formulas that are trying to size the opportunity from different angles, complexity, duration, cost, and also introduce some factor in a very strict way the value, no? And the value is possible through experiments, through reference, and through tangible evidence that is not going to be only a qualitative impact, no? And that's something that with a lot of discipline we are running recurrently in a dynamic prioritization mode, trying to gather initiative under programs. I think it's very important to identify like chapter, which are the areas or the environments where we identify that 6 initiatives could resonate and create more impact than just one, and to unlock those 5 at the same time, probably it's more important because you are able to generate synergies. There is a curve of experimentation and learning that could be used and create like a resonance effect. And those factors that are probably not obvious are the ones that generate more debate and force the teams to understand very well before starting that we are selecting and we are stopping initiatives that after those tests probably are not giving the result that we expected. No, it's so important. In many occasions, even more important to kill at the right moment one initiative. No matter how engaged we were, how in love we were with that initiative, if we identified that the environment has changed, the necessity is not so important, or the technology is giving us the opportunity to tackle another project, and that was impossible to achieve. No, we have lived that. We have lived that in the last 18 months in a recurrent number of times. No? Every time we saw that the newest large language model, the new RAG, the new orchestration, the new agent was able to do something almost like a commodity, we have stopped the inertia and the decision process and reevaluate if we were selecting properly or if we had the chance to adopt another criteria. No?
So that's very helpful that you're able to, as you said, evaluate and then also kill projects if need be, because maybe what you are building is probably available out in the market. So that kind of leads me to a couple of quick questions on that front. One is, what is the philosophy within the organization as to build versus buy? Because sometimes technological groups become so in love that it's better to build things. So for your peers, what do you feel that everything needs to be built in, or you look at buying, partnering, etc.?
So my own experience in the current stage in Ferrovial is conditioned by the the reality of our sector, the type of challenges that we are transferring to the technology that we could use at some point. No, so it's not applicable to all companies. No? In a pharma, to preserve something like a secret value probably could give you the answer in a much more clear way. No, we are very conscious of that trade-off. Always the eternal dilemma between make or buy give you a lack of competitiveness, but a sense of proudness because you are doing things by yourself. No, so to be completely aware about what you can take from outside of your company, but at the same time, which are the variables where you want to create consciously a long-term competitive advantage is critical, and to put the right seeds in order to preserve that those competitive factors remain across the year. No? Talking about AI, and obviously we are not going to develop LLMs like almost anyone. We are completely convinced that to fine tune several existing open source LLM with our proprietary data could give us a competitive factor that it could be very interesting probably in the short, medium term. So we are using that many occasions with our internal data scientists and data engineers, in others with partners that have been developed with us among the years, very close relationship. During the last months, what we did is to identify which are the typical bottlenecks that are constrain the capacity to scale and accelerate the deployment in large organizations. Everybody is doing pilots, everybody is flirting with all those technologies, but the reality is that it's becoming very difficult to scale and maintain with all the boundary conditions. No? And we put emphasis in trying to develop by ourselves the first prototype of a transversal platform to maintain that. And at some point, we identified that it was robust enough in order to give us confidence. And what we did is to create like a joint venture approach, in this case with DXC, our partner, and created Kerkus, and this is a transversal platform that has that goal. No, this is one example of that trade-off. We started believing and being completely conscious that to have a transversal platform with the aim to accelerate the adoption and to scale in large corporation would be super critical and competitive. And once we identify that that could become a product itself, we recognize that there are other players in this case that with a partnership approach, we identify that in a more vibrant way. So we are classifying and declassifying in that make or buy approach recurrently as the portfolio prioritization. If we want to maintain the necessity to develop certain things, of if at certain moment we need to transfer to an external partner or directly go to the market and buy off the shelf through a SaaS solution or consuming an API. We are very conscious about security, about the integrity of the data, about how to maintain the resiliency in all the um, uh, aspects that are connected with the interaction with our final user. And those 3 or 4 variables are always taken in account in those trade-offs, because at the end, to have 100 application without a consistent data model could be delicate in the future, could be uh, not connected with a resilient mode to operate. And we need to understand also that on average in US and in many other areas, the lifespan of many of the startups is not more than 2 or 3 years. 60% of the startups fail, and what we are seeing right now in the AI ecosystem, that many of the services provided as a solution by those startups could not be available in 2 or 3 years from now into the evolution of the startup ecosystem itself. It is critical what you are incorporating to your company. Maybe it's the right moment to adopt that and develop yourself. You believe is going to be needed in the future.
Yeah. So, I mean, you talked a lot about the partnership, Dimitris. So, as you said, do you partner with academic institutions also from a research standpoint? I mean, you talked about the startups. Obviously, all innovation cannot happen internally. So you look at startups, startups, the danger is that they might not be around. But so talk a little bit about your partnership strategy with academic institutions and others.
So that's what you have said. So we assume that the smart contracts are by definition of sight, just using the statistic of the population. And the way we embrace open innovation is with that mindset reserve and in motion. We are continuously scanning the traditional shareholders in that domain with academia, labs, startups, incubators, and even the VC ecosystem, that they are always scouting, analyzing with different angles and with a financial perspective. The proposal, we are very selectively embracing and engaging with many of them. And in academia in particular, we have a very deep connection with the MIT for decades in US, but not just the UAT. We are MIT, we are with UT, with Georgia Tech, and many others in Spain, also in many other countries. And we are selectively approaching departments, approaching professors, and launching our challenge. And many of them, more than never visualizing the future, are able to be tackled with research where the data and the applicability of AI could give a better outlook or a much more precise definition of how to resolve those problems. This required to be active and to share and socialize what you are doing. This has to be also a balance. When you are embracing that open innovation ecosystem, you need to try to extract and maximize what you are getting, but at the same time, understanding that you are a member of that environment and you need to give back. You need to approach those discussions always with a win-win, more or less balance, because many of those actors are smaller startups or small departments or research division that don't have necessarily your capacity to execute. No, you to have to preserve the empathy, understand your role, and at the same time understand the needs and the role of the others in order to give back what is important for them also.
Yeah. So we're working with a large number of academic and research institutions. That's good to know across the world, whether it's MIT, UT Austin, Georgia Tech. That's very, very helpful, especially for people who are looking to engage with your organization. Coming back to the point, one of the challenges that a lot of your peers face is, and you touched on this, but just to expand on this, Dimitris, is the ROI or return on investment for some of these activities. There have been a lot of discussions that have been going on as to, hey, is this hype? What kind of return, etc., is coming in? And you talked a little bit about it. But does Ferrovial look at uh, quantitative returns, or is there other measures also? Because everything, especially with AI, when you look at efficiency, when you look at some of the other measures can't be quantified. For your peers who are struggling in getting back to their CEOs or their boards about ROI, can you just address that topic?
Yeah, I think that's a hot topic nowadays to address and decouple the real wave from the noise
Yes.
and to identify what is relevant for your sector, your business is very critical. No, obviously there is a hype, but the hype I think has to be understood like the necessity to be connected, updated with a relevant transformative change that
Mm-hmm.
has to um, um, give you the opportunity to be prepared if it's really an impact. And that perception, that feeling, I think was felt and exposed in the last year and a half, in particular, talking about generative AI. I will split two dimensions. When we are deploying generic AI capabilities in order to amplify or augment the productivity and efficiency of our employees, generic solution that could be customized, could be off the shelf. I think there the qualitative, quantitative is present because it's like the use of a calculator. No? Everybody is having today calculator, and nobody is in detail making the ROI of what's really the impact, no, or the license of an Excel sheet. Why is needed? Because this is a tool that is giving you the opportunity to augment what you are able to provide, and that is a starting point was performed by us in a very deep analytic and data-driven approach when we were one of the earliest companies in our domain globally to adopt, in this case, the Copilot 1 year ago. We measure the impact of our test group, and our conclusion were very evident. No? They were saving hours per day. Those hours per day were able to be applied in much more probably detailed analysis or to gain the capability to approach different projects. No? So we scaled that at the beginning with a qualitative approach, but at the end, we have a very solid conviction that there was a variable that we were mobilizing. When we are talking about the specific solution that are using AI, like the example of the inspection lines for the transmission energy, the ROI is very precise. We are replacing humans, machinery, time, risk. The combination of those variables in a process that is repetitive and has accumulated data along the years, giving us in many occasions the opportunity to put a number, to put an impact, and to contrast that impact not after the scale up of the implementation during the first implementation, no, and to maintain that philosophy always in a humble way, no, to force the overall machinery of the company to identify which is the impact and to measure that impact. I believe in many of the AI related use cases that are touching physical environment or are trying to mobilize an existing problem from a different angle, it's possible to generate. No, you need to have that conviction, spread that across all the shareholders. It's not just the responsibility of the IT digital; it's the combined goal of a diverse team where the business is at the epicenter, and the necessity to generate impact. It is able to be measured. No? In many occasions, you need a statistic because it's a process that probably is not so recurrent, but in others, yes, um, in a couple of iterations, it is obvious that the expectation is achieved or not. If it's not achieved, it's like any other type of process. No?
Yeah. So there are some tangible returns. You evaluate the ROI significantly all the time. Dimitris, just as a follow on to this, from your peers, one of the big issues for them is what role should the CEO or C-level execs play in terms of the visibility and awareness of what's happening in AI? Or what kind of support should the board or C-level execs give to this initiative? Can you talk a little bit about that?
I've seen, on the contrary of other technologies that we have explored during the last decade, no, many of them have lived a hype, a much more conscious reaction, a much more vivid involvement, starting from the board and coming down to even the last employee that has raised their hand, demanding. No? I think it's crucial that in a moment like the one we are living, it's an inflection point in many occasions in the way we are approaching digitalization, to have an active and continuous discussion, interaction with the C level of the company, and to equalize and to bring a homogeneous understanding of the paradigm shift that we are living. It's something that has to be synchronized across all those stakeholders. First of all, to transmit the message and to transmit the potential of the impact with the same level of depth um, and breadth, no? And at the same time, to to calibrate, on the contrary, the expectations. Not everything is able to be achieved. If you don't have the right data and you don't have the right platform, you have not invested at the right moment in order to be digital, it's going to be very difficult because you will have to leapfrog twice and in order to achieve and capture the potential of AI. And many of those discussions involving the C-level and the board, what give you is the conviction of how fast you need to accelerate your existing digital transformation in order to not lose the opportunity to really capture the benefit of AI adoption. No? And those discussions require more than ever to have the context and to be equalized in understanding of what really could be the threat and the opportunity of AI. No? From the perspective of the augmented employee, to position each company. We saw months ago, 1 year ago, how many universities, many institutions banned the use of several of those solutions, and I can understand the dilemma at that point. Corporates also had the same dilemma. Once you position, you require there's the relevance of what they represent to give those tools to the employees at the scale, very, very close understanding of all the internal stakeholders, just to capture the opportunity, transfer the message and the narrative about why are you expecting at a wider scale. No? But yeah, this is a critical point. Everybody is trying with their peers to explore and to understand if there are new avenues in order to capture the potential, and the support top down, starting from the board, and the channeling of the messages in order to align everybody with the necessity to look with new eyes how to tackle historical problems and how to enable new solutions, potentially with the adoption of these new technologies. I think it's a transversal responsibility at all levels of the company.
Now, that's a very important point for our listeners. What I think Demetrius is saying is it's important to engage your board or your C-level execs, but also set reasonable expectations because it depends on the data, it depends on the infrastructure, etc. I think that's a very important point. Uh, Demetrius, you deal with a lot of data as you talked about. Um, there are obviously one of the things that comes up for chief AI officers is the whole ethical issue of data as well as data integrity. Because there is, this is data that is ingested from the web. There could be biases, etc., in there. So, how do you deal with the issue of ethics and governance in this role that you have?
First of all, including that uh, um, angle or that set of constraints or variables since the definition of the idea. This is not a post-mortem verification um, check that you are applying just to validate if everything is wrong. No, it's
Mhm.
like the cybersecurity. No, if you are consciously aware about the importance of how to be uh, as much as possible cyber protected in the development of any solution, you need to embed cybersecurity in the early stage architectural concepts of the solution. No, and you need to be aware of the legislation that is applicable in the jurisdiction you operate. In our case, in many of the projects being in Europe. Europe is more advanced, like it's happening in many other scenarios to apply and give you a clear context. To assess any algorithm and dissect is the source of the data, which are the potential bias that you have, conscious or unconscious, introduced by the process itself. Contrast that we test and be supported by external uh, actor that could give you that objective analysis if you are not capable with your own resources to perform those analyses to create a solid and structured frameworks based in the existing legislation or in the best practices that in many groups in your sector, I believe all of our audience is listening and introducing that since the beginning. No? The cost of something that has not been understood or has been deployed and has been converted in a standard to be reconstructed and to be started from zero is not worth it. No, I think it's not a constraint; it's a boundary condition like many others, and we need to have the sensibility um, and the clear understanding of what could be the repercussion when that has been understood. I think it's much more simpler to implement, maintain, and keep it always very present. No, could reduce the speed, could create problems in the deployment because there are more stages that you need to add, but like many others that we have already introduced from decades.
Mhm. So, governance and ethics and security, data privacy are very, very important. And what I think, Demetrius, you're saying is setting up those processes early and upfront in the process is very, very important. And that's what you recommend, and that's what you're doing. Um, Demetrius, one of the purposes of this podcast is to democratize AI talent. Basically, our one of our missions is that all the you know AI talent that is either coming out of some of the institutions that you talked about in Europe or in the US and MIT and all these other places and other AI talent should be looking at companies like Ferrovial because if they all end up in these six, seven tech companies, then AI will never get its real value. So, for our listeners, and you kind of highlighted this through this entire conversation, but just for our listeners, for AI professionals listening to this podcast, what makes Ferrovial an exciting place to work in the field of AI? And what qualities do you look for when you're building your AI team? So, someone, if you're looking to hire someone, what qualities would you look for?
I think we have demonstrated that along last 7 decades that we have been operating, that the innovation is in the DNA of our activities. It's one of our values as excellent. And when you combine innovation, excellence, and integrity, which is another one, and create intersection, um, very, very interesting when we are talking about AI. Right now, in front of a technology that's giving us the capability to reinvent the way we were facing problems and solutions, to be in a company that is embracing that, with the confidence that we are going to generate a positive outcome, and with the commitment of, thanks to the thoughtful dedication of our employees, explore and maximize the opportunities. I think is exciting. No, we are changing and generating positive impact for a sustainable world in infrastructure that should last for centuries. Um, we are not seeing our infrastructure like a scarce over the surface of the territory. We are seeing like the opposite, no, like the healing solution that is solving the congestion, it's solving mobility problems, is democratizing the access to the water, no? And when we are connecting social impact and technology for many of the new candidates and for the new experts in technology that want to embrace one sector, I think we represent a cornerstone that could trigger social values that are very, very important nowadays. No, we recognize that talent is a scarce concept that is globally available, and to tackle and knock the door of those, no matter where they are, that want to embrace this journey, is what we are doing proactively and with the eyes continually open. No, it is true. Quality versus quantity is part of our foundational goals, and we are very selective, trying to understand that to introduce someone with an entrepreneurial spirit, despite we are a large corporation with a willingness to contribute and to take their own decisions and uh, self-manage those uh, uncertainties, it's something that is not for everyone. But in that talent pool that we are continually scouting, we are very proud to incorporate incredible professionals that are part of what we are and creating value for the future generations.
No, that's very helpful to our listeners who are looking for an opportunity. I think Dimitris has kind of talked about how AI is really part of their DNA across every aspect of the business. And it is also a mission focused business where there is sustainability, and it's driven by values and ethics. And it's a global enterprise. So I think, it's really important for people who are looking for opportunities to look at this organization very, very clearly. Dimitris, towards the end, we have this interesting lightning round of questions where we are looking for a one-word answer from you. And after having this big, heavy talk, let's find out a little bit about your thoughts in terms of some of these things in a one-word answer. So, you ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay, let's go. So, Dimitris, GPUs or TPUs?
GPUs, definitely.
Okay. Python or R?
Python,
TensorFlow or PyTorch?
PyTorch,
Okay. Cloud or on-prem?
cloud.
Okay. And we talked a little bit about this. Synthetic data or human-originated data?
Oof.
Mhm.
I use both.
Yes, you can use both too, by the way.
Both, but my brain is moving towards synthetic data. I think the possibility to scale faster and with wider scenarios is really, really attractive.
Uh, Dimitri, just as a follow-on, just to that point, I mean, the the discussion on synthetic data is that over time it gets it loses its value, it gets disintegrated, etc. Do you agree with that? Because it's like they say you make a copy of a copy of a copy, then at some point, because it's loses its value. Would you agree on that?
But it depend of the domain. No? In the domains that we consciously have decided to generate synthetic data, we are gaining the opposite. We are multiplying the opportunities to train in scenarios where the viable data is very limited. So we are not degrading the value along the years. We are giving much more context, no, and that is accelerating and improving the outcomes of the models.
That's a very important point. The data does not exist, and in fact, he's saying it actually increases the value of the data. So, in terms of AI ethics, is it a priority or a requirement?
It's a priority.
Okay. Open source or proprietary software AI?
Open source.
Okay, awesome. Wonderful. You did fantastic, Dimitris. Really, you gave some great answers. Now, at the end, Dimitris, can you talk to some of our listeners who are looking to establish a chief AI officer role or build out their AI capabilities? What are some of the key lessons that you have learned in your journey so far, and what advice would you give to these companies?
But that is no really humble recommendations based in our ongoing journey, no, to reimagine with a vision what you would like to achieve and not get obsessed about the technology, no. Frame properly, which is the available time that you have in order to really transform your process, your company, your division, your strategy with these technologies, and size the the opportunity very closely with the business, no, to understand how they can expect or what could be reimagined with the right technology at the right moment, in particular with AI. It's a common conversation that should start in a nimble way and gain relevance along the iterations. No, um, try to iterate and experiment as soon as they will be aligned with the business. No, you don't need to face, like we have seen in the past, 15 months, 10 months, 6 months mega projects in order to start delivering value or projection of the potential value. No, this is something that is reinforcing a lot the roadmaps, is helping to crystallize the potential outcome, and is giving much more support to the budgets that they will have to raise or to the business model that jointly they will have to develop with the business units. No? Nothing new, but at the same time complicated to orchestrate in large corporation. No? So to operate with uncertainty and to at the same time project and believe that there is intrinsic value that you are able to unlock. I think it's an important role also of anyone working directly with AI in a large corporation, because you can grasp at the beginning without going in detail that there is value. Like when you are there, you understand the core of the technology and the potential impact to advocate and to socialize and to orchestrate the resources, no matter how complicated it is, in order to achieve the goal, medium term, long term. I think it's worth it, and AI roles have that pivotal um, capacity to orchestrate and to align the energy, the focus, and the purpose to achieve those new targets.
No, that's very helpful. So aligning business with technology, being conscious of the moment, and looking at the ROI, some very important points that you have helped our listeners with, Dimitris. And this has been Very, very insightful conversation. And thank you, Dimitris, for this fascinating conversation. You have provided some valuable insight into how AI is transforming the infrastructure sector, from enhancing operational efficiency to driving sustainability initiatives. Your perspective on balancing innovation with safety, a culture of experimentation, and preparing for an AI-driven future offers invaluable lessons for your peers and leaders across industries. So, thank you for sharing your expertise and vision with us today. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to the CIO podcast. Remember to subscribe for more engaging discussions with AI leaders shaping our world. And until next time, keep innovating. Dimitris, this was awesome, really, really helpful because innovation is happening in so many different industries and domains, and our listeners need to know that, your peers need to know that, people who are looking to become chief AI officers need to know that, and people looking to look for opportunities either as jobs or as startups looking for client opportunities need to know that, and you really helped us with that. So thank you so much.
No, thank you for the opportunity, and I will continue listening future episode. And congratulations for the initiative, to deploy and increase the awareness of AI. It's something that you are obtaining. So thank you for your contribution.
Thank you so much, Dimitris.